The final countdown to destruction had begun. Across the silent void of space, dozens of armadas hung in tense formation. Warships of every shape and size lined up like glimmering daggers against the darkness, engines thrumming with latent power. Each vessel's weapons were primed, targeting systems locked onto enemies they'd prepared decades to annihilate. On every bridge, alien commanders held their breath, claws hovering over firing triggers. This was it, the moment the galaxy had long feared, the opening shots of a war that could burn through star systems and echo through history. All fleets hold formation. A deep, guttural voice crackled over a flagship's comm channel. Supreme Warlord Krazak of the Draken Imperium narrowed his 7 eyes at the battle map filled with enemy ships. Diplomacy had failed. Only the harsh logic of laser and plasma remained. Krazak flexed a scaly hand, steeling himself for carnage on the opposite side. Admiral Selana of the Solari Union steeled herself as she gazed at the distant Draken armada. For her people, this war was about survival and honor. She whispered a quick prayer that the coming battle would at least be swift and decisive. Nearby, other species' fleets loomed as well. Insectoid swarms, hulking war barges, sleek stealth ships, each with their own grudges and reasons to fight. The battlefield was a patchwork of rivalries ready to ignite. The tension was unbearable. And then, just as fire control officers prepared to unleash hell, a small, hesitant voice cut through the chaos on the open frequency. It was a human voice. Hello? Testing, is this on? The voice said, sounding strangely clear yet utterly out of place amid the martial bravado. On every flagship, aliens glanced at their communications officers in confusion. Who dare to speak now? The humans. What could they possibly have to say at a time like this? This is Commander Rafael Chow of the Terran Alliance. The voice continued, a bit more confidently now. We have a proposal for all of you. Warlord Krazak let out a sharp snort. The audacity of these humans. He remembered humanity's first appearance a few cycles ago. Soft, pinkish creatures from a backwater world preaching unity and creativity. Krazak had found them amusing at best. Now, on the eve of war, the human wanted to talk. On Admiral Selana's bridge, a few Solari officers exchanged puzzled looks. Talk about what? There was nothing left to negotiate. Every diplomatic channel had been exhausted. Selana's tendrils clenched, expecting a last-second, desperate plea from the humans. Commander Chow's voice pressed on, earnest and calm. Before anyone does something they'll regret, the leaders of Earth would like to extend an invitation to all of you. He paused. Across the vast battlefield, dozens of species listened in perplexed silence. Rather than shoot at each other, how about we all meet in person and have a cup of coffee? For a moment, there was nothing but static. A galaxy's worth of warriors collectively blinked in astonishment. Coffee? Had they misheard? Was this some kind of code word for a weapon or strategy? Selana's second-in-command chittered in confusion. Krazak's 7 eyes blinked one after the other. On a Zeraxi destroyer, an insectoid lieutenant tilted his head, antennae twitching as if testing whether the translation implants were faulty. You heard right. Chow continued, his tone almost apologetic for the absurdity of it. Coffee. You know, a hot beverage. Earth's favorite drink. We figure maybe it's worth a shot. One friendly meeting on a neutral asteroid outpost, with coffee for everyone. If it doesn't work, you can always go back to blowing each other up afterward. Somewhere in the Grav Command ship, a low chuckle rumbled among the granite-skinned warriors. In the Solari fleet, Admiral Selana found herself suppressing an incredulous smile. Was this a serious diplomatic overture or some kind of last-minute gallows humor from the humans? Krazak, however, roared with laughter, a harsh, grating sound that echoed through his bridge. These humans have lost their minds, he snarled, baring rows of razor-sharp teeth. They want to chat over drinks while our cannons stand ready? Absurd. Yet, he didn't give the order to fire. Not just yet, because somewhere in that ridiculous idea, there was a sliver of intrigue. Krazak was a brute, but not a fool. The idea was so naive, so unprecedented, that it gave even him pause. No one in galactic history had ever suggested a coffee break instead of a war. The open channel erupted with chatter as each fleet reacted. Voices overlapped in a cacophony of languages and translator-filtered dialects. "Perhaps they wish to poison us all at once," growled a Grav warrior. Cracking his knuckles, a high-pitched whine came from the Zaraxi admiral. "What is coffee? Is it a weapon?" Commander Chow spoke again, somehow maintaining a diplomatic calm. "No trick, I promise. Just a chance to talk. And it's really good coffee, I assure you. We'll even bring pastries." Across the fleets, a few officers had to double-check if pastries was translated correctly. Indeed, it was. The humans were offering baked goods. Some gave nervous laughs, others fumed at the insult, but all listened. Curiosity began to spread through the armadas. Selana finally responded on the open channel, her voice measured. "Commander Chow, this is Admiral Selana. Your proposal is highly unorthodox. Give us one good reason we should even consider this meeting." Chow's relief at getting a reply was almost tangible through his voice. "Admiral, because every other approach has failed. You've all tried talking through diplomats, and that fell apart. You tried threats and shows of force. We're still at a stalemate. So maybe a casual conversation, face-to-face, with a humble cup of coffee, might succeed where formal negotiations did not. Worst case, if peace is impossible, you'll have a last good drink before doing what you must." A silence followed as that logic sank in. It was strange logic, but not without merit. One more attempt at peace, framed not as peace talks, but as something more informal, even friendly. One by one, the leaders of the warring species responded. Some with grudging acceptance, others with curious enthusiasm. The consensus: they would pause the countdown to war and attend this bizarre coffee summit. Under strict conditions, of course. Warlord Krazak was the first to reply. He growled that he'd crush the humans if this was a trick, but grudgingly admitted he was curious enough to grant a 1-hour truce. Admiral Selana also agreed, for the sake of a chance at peace. Even the Zaraxi Swarm Queen buzzed that she would attend this coffee ritual, with shields up, of course. Commander Chow let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. "Excellent. We'll make the preparations at Outpost 17. See you all soon. And, we take ours with sugar or cream, but drink it however you like." His attempt at humor was met mostly with static, though a few aliens did find a tiny human funny. At least it defused the tension a notch, and so the stage was set. The galaxy's most dangerous gathering was about to take place. Not on the battlefield, but around a coffee table. Little did anyone know, the fate of millions would hinge on a beverage born from a little brown bean on a small blue planet. Outpost 17 was a lonely asteroid base, chosen for its location exactly equidistant between the opposing fleets. Normally, it was a minor fueling depot for cargo ships. Today, it became something else entirely. Humans scrambled to transform the bare-bones outpost into a welcoming cafe. They arranged seating for every alien shape and climate zones for every need. The rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee soon filled the air. Commander Chow fussed over final details: coffee, cups, pastries, while Dr. Marika Vance ran scans to ensure nothing served would accidentally harm or offend any species. Still, as the appointed time neared, Chow felt a knot in his stomach. Would anyone actually come? Or would the fleets use this as a chance to launch a sneak attack? He didn't have to wonder for long. One by one, shuttlecraft from the various fleets began to arrive at Outpost 17, docking carefully under the temporary ceasefire protocols. The first to disembark was Admiral Selana and her Solari delegation. Tall, willowy beings with bioluminescent patterns rippling across their blue-green skin. They looked around, large eyes blinking at the cozy, improvised cafe setting. Next came a contingent of Grav warriors, massive, stone-like humanoids who had to duck through the door. They sniffed the air, puzzled by the warm, roasted scent wafting through the hall. Following them was a trio of Zaraxi insectoids, skittering cautiously along the floor, multifaceted eyes scanning every corner for potential threats. Representatives of countless species trickled in, forming a truly motley assembly. Notable arrivals included a floating, jellyfish-like Andromedan envoy in a life support jar pulsing with curiosity, 2 spider-like drones inhabited by cybernetic hive mind, and of course Warlord Krazak himself, scales deep crimson and battle-scarred, who even brought along his massive warhammer until he was persuaded to leave it outside. It was a surreal sight. Beings who under any other circumstance would be trying to obliterate each other now stood awkwardly together in a hall decorated with potted plants, mellow earth music playing softly in the background. Chow had chosen some gentle jazz, hoping it might soothe even a warlord's temper. The human hosts moved around offering polite greetings, careful not to startle anyone. A few aliens exchanged uneasy glances. None wanted to be the first to sit, or the first to taste the mysterious brew these humans were so proud of. Finally, a particularly brave Solari scientist approached the coffee bar where a human barista, a cheerful staff sergeant who had volunteered, stood ready behind an array of steaming carafes. "How may I help you?" the barista asked with a warm smile. The Solari tilted her head. "We will try this coffee." She watched intently as a cup was poured from a French press, the dark liquid steaming. She took the cup in her slender blue fingers and carried it back to her group, drink still untouched. Seeing one cup successfully dispensed without incident, others slowly joined the line. Soon, dozens of aliens held an assortment of Earth coffee drinks. Espresso shots, creamy lattes, iced coffees, each species gravitating to something that appealed to them. Yet many still had not taken a sip. The tension in the room remained thick. Old rivalries die hard. One table seated Admiral Selana directly across from Warlord Krazak. They locked eyes with suspicion as always. Only now a simple wooden table with a bowl of sugar packets and a plate of croissants lay between them instead of a battlefront. Commander Chow cleared his throat gently and raised his own mug. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice amplified softly by the room speakers. Every alien eye, or eye equivalent, turned to him. He felt sweat on his brow but pressed on with a hopeful smile. "I know this is highly unusual. Frankly, none of us know if this will work. But it's my hope that maybe, just maybe, sharing something simple, like a good cup of coffee, might remind us of what we have in common, or at least give us a moment to see each other as living beings and not just enemies." He lifted his mug in a toast. After a puzzled beat, Admiral Selana mimicked the gesture with her cup. One by one, others slowly followed. Warlord Krazak, arms still crossed, eventually picked up his tiny espresso cup in his clawed hand, looking almost comical. If anyone had dared laugh, they might have lost their head, but no one did. They all just watched each other. "To peace, however temporary," Chow said, "and to understanding." He took a sip. Selana took a sip. Krazak sniffed at his espresso, snorted at the bitter smell, and then downed it in one gulp just to get it over with. Around the hall, aliens began to drink. The first tentative sips drew a variety of reactions. Many gagged at the initial bitterness. One aquatic diplomat flailed wildly at her first sip until a human stirred in some cream and sugar. Others, like the rock-skinned Grov general, downed it black and grunted in approval at its boldness. Whispers began to spread as the aliens continued to taste the strange Earth concoction. It was not awful. In fact, some found it quite pleasant. A gentle warmth spread inside them, a momentary comfort in the midst of tension. The humans watched nervously, but seeing no immediate outrage and no one keeling over poisoned, they began to breathe a little easier that a few minutes in, mugs were half empty. That's when the subtle effects really began to set in. Admiral Selana felt her tightly wound nerves start to unknot. She found herself in light conversation with the Solari scientist beside her about the flavor of the coffee. Was that a hint of chocolate in the brew? Possibly. Warlord Krazak remained stoic, but even he felt a strange calm settling over him. The humans had attempted no treachery so far. The espresso's bitter strength was something he grudgingly respected. He set his tiny cup down and eyed the plate of pastries on the table. A nearby human diplomat offered the plate with an encouraging nod. Krazak grumbled under his breath, but a warlord never refuses free sustenance. He picked up a glazed donut between two massive claws and took a bite. It was absurdly sweet. He nearly spat it out, but after a moment, to his own surprise, he decided he liked it. He continued munching, his perpetual scowl softening ever so slightly. Conversation slowly kindled around the hall. Not conflict, but actual talk. It started small. A Grav warrior turned to an old rival from the Zaraxi. "This coffee is strong. Reminds me of the brews of my youth," he rumbled. The Zaraxi, mandibles clacking thoughtfully, replied, "Our nectar is sweeter, but this is character." They found themselves comparing beverages from their home planets at tea another table. Admiral Selana and Warlord Krazak, still facing off, finally broke their silence. "So, Krazak," Selana ventured carefully, "you actually came? I half expected you to fire on this station the moment you landed." Krazak let out a low growl, which Selana braced to interpret as anger, but it turned into something like a chuckle. "I considered it," he admitted, "but I have to say I was curious about the human's audacity. It takes a warrior's courage to stand before warring armies and propose a coffee break." He said the last two words with bemusement rather than scorn. Selana nodded, conceding a tiny smile. Humans are nothing if not audacious. Sometimes that's irritating, sometimes it's admirable. She swirled the dark liquid in her cup gently. "To be honest, I was at my wit's end. If this didn't work, I had no plan C." Krazak's fierce eyes flickered softer for a moment. "Nor did I. War was certain. Perhaps we both leapt at any alternative, even a foolish one, because deep down, we aren't as eager for bloodshed as we pretended." The Draken warlord exhaled a long hiss. "All this war posturing, it is tiring. We've been enemies for so long, I sometimes forget why." Selana was slightly stunned by the candor. Was the great warlord opening up to her? She couldn't tell if it was the disarming environment, the lack of immediate danger, or something else. Meanwhile, a ripple of laughter spread through one corner of the room. Officers from species that had been mortal enemies an hour ago were now chuckling together at a story a human diplomat was animatedly sharing. Something about an Earth captain who once tried Grav liquor and promptly passed out. The Grav officer boomed with laughter, slapping his knee and nearly cracking the chair beneath him. At the tail, while a Solari admiral beside him chimed in that she could imagine the scene perfectly. Not to be outdone, a Zaraxi commander recounted an outrageous festival on his homeworld involving fermented tree sap, which made a prim avian delegate spray her coffee in disbelief. That only led to more laughter and some good-natured cleaning up with offered napkins. Bit by bit, the mood in the hall shifted. What began as stiff, standoffish silence was turning into, unbelievably, a scene of mingling and even camaraderie. Former adversaries refilled each other's cups. A human attendant walked around with a pot, topping off anyone who motioned for more. The ice was truly breaking. As minutes passed, something became evident to a few keen observers. Many of the fiercest warriors present had begun to mellow considerably. A normally aggressive Zaraxi general was now gently fiddling with a wooden stir stick, listening intently as an Andromedan navigator spoke about star mapping techniques. A fearsome amphibious warlord, known for her explosive temper, was calmly sipping an iced mocha, her frilled crest relaxed and drooping, a sign of contentment. That Dr. Marika Vance, the xenobiologist, subtly checked readings on a handheld scanner and raised her eyebrows. She pulled Commander Chow aside quietly. "It's working," she whispered. "What's working?" he asked, momentarily distracted from watching a polygoth and a Grav arm wrestle amicably over the last jelly donut. Marika showed him the scanner data, heart rates, and neural indicators from a few aliens she had discreetly been monitoring. "I think the caffeine, the stimulant in the coffee, is having a different effect on them than it does on us. In many of these species, it's actually calming their aggression centers, basically the opposite of what it does for humans. It's promoting a kind of well-being, taking the edge off their fight-or-flight responses." Chow blinked in amazement. "So our coffee is, by pure chance, a relaxant for a lot of them?" Marika smiled. "Seems so. Not for all, but for many. Who knew?" They both cast a glance across the room at the various aliens chatting calmly. Chow let out a soft laugh of disbelief. "We just wanted to get them talking. We didn't exactly plan on drugging them." He shook his head, then quipped, "But if it's making them friendlier, I'll take it. Still, we should probably be transparent about this if someone starts asking questions." Right on cue, a sharp voice rose above the friendly murmur. "What have you humans put in this?" demanded an angular, spindly ambassador from the Corlakian Dominion. now standing with his mug clutched tightly. His tone was accusatory and a bit alarmed. Some kind of mind control serum? I feel, oddly, content. This is not normal. Heads turned toward the confrontation. Conversations hushed. An uneasy tension crept back in as many of the delegates suddenly became self-aware. Yes, they were feeling strangely at ease. Was it a trick after all? Commander Chow quickly stepped forward, palms open in a placating gesture. It's just coffee, he said, voice earnest. I promise. The same stuff we drink every day back on Earth. Water, roasted beans, a little sugar or cream, nothing more. We are not trying to drug you. We honestly expected it to energize you like it does us. Dr. Vance stepped up beside Chow, holding her scanner tablet visibly as evidence. I can confirm, she added in a clear, scientific tone, there are no additives or anything intended to control you. However, she nodded to the Korlakian and the others, it appears caffeine, the natural chemical in coffee, interacts very differently with many of your biologies. We didn't predict it, but it seems to be helping reduce stress and aggression responses in several of you. A happy coincidence, not a scheme. The Korlakian ambassador squinted, still suspicious. How do we know this isn't a deception? A Trojan beverage, he muttered. I could see that. Admiral Selana stood up from her table, gently setting down her half-finished cup. Her authoritative voice carried through the hall. Because I feel it too, she declared. I feel calmer than I expected, yes. But I also do not feel coerced or manipulated. I simply feel more clear-headed than I have in ages while discussing matters with you all. She looked around at her fellow officers and rivals. It's true. I was angry, full of vengeful fire not an hour ago. Now that anger has ebbed, and I've realized I'd almost forgotten why we were about to go to war in the first place. Over an insult? Territory? Those reasons seem insufficient now. Warlord Krazak gave a low grunt, rising to stand as well. The anger in me has cooled as well, he rumbled. He then flashed a fearsome toothed grin that somehow came off almost sheepish. If the humans wanted to poison me, they'd have to do better than sweet pastries and bitter bean juice. Perhaps the only thing they've poisoned is my taste for war. He glanced at the glazed donut still in his clawed hand, and a few chuckles rolled through the room. Laughter, actual laughter, among leaders of armies who mere hours ago were ready to butcher each other. The tight knot of tension that had briefly returned was quickly loosened again by Krazak's joke and the appreciative reactions from around the hall. The Korlakian ambassador, seeing others at ease, slowly sat back down. He took another tentative sip of his coffee and muttered something about crazy human chemicals, but he no longer sounded accusing, just amazed. With that moment of suspicion behind them, the gathering eased back into its newfound warmth. If anything, the close call only reinforced the budding trust in the room. The aliens realized many of their counterparts were feeling the same surprising calm, and perhaps none of them truly wanted to go back to their ships and resume fighting. Conversations turned deeper now. It wasn't just small talk about drinks or culture, though plenty of that continued. A group of Zelaquatics were eagerly swapping soup recipes with a human Navy cook, while a pair of avian diplomats asked for the jazz music playlist to take home. By and large, the dialogue carefully ventured into the very issues that had brought them to the brink of war in the first place. This time, however, there was far less venom and posturing. In one circle, an Andromedan diplomat confessed that her fragile, jellyfish-like colonies felt constantly threatened by others encroaching on their space. Nearby, a bulky Paraxian admiral admitted that centuries-old pride and a thirst for revenge had clouded his judgment toward his old enemies. Hearing these frank admissions in a calm environment made even longtime rivals nod in understanding. Slowly, faction leaders began to truly see the perspectives of their supposed enemies in a new light at the center table, the unofficial leaders' table. Krazak and Selana were now joined by a few other top commanders from various sides. Fresh mugs were poured all around as needed. One delicate moment came when a plate of crunchy biscotti biscuits was passed and Krazak nearly cracked one with a bite. A human showed him how to dunk it in his coffee, which he did with a warrior's determination. It earned some endearing smiles, but that's another story. If we stand down our fleets, how do we ensure others won't take advantage? asked a skeptical, multi-eyed arachnid lord who had long distrusted the Solari. Admiral Selana answered steadily, "Because we're all here together, finding a path forward. Perhaps a new treaty, born not of desperation, but of the understanding that none of us truly wants to lose lives needlessly." She cast a meaningful look at Krazak, the Draken Imperium included. Krazak gave a slow, solemn nod. "My people are taught that war is glory, but endless war. There is no one left to sing of your glory if all are gone." A true warrior also knows the value of restraint. His gaze drifted to Commander Chow. "It seems sometimes the smallest voices can speak the loudest truth. Chow, your people did us a service today. Had we fought, the losses would have been immeasurable. Perhaps we owe you, and your coffee, a debt of gratitude." Commander Chow shook his head humbly. "We only did what we hoped was right. I think at the end of the day, everyone prefers a warm drink by a hearth to the cold void of battle. We're just glad you all gave it a chance." A soft chime signaled the hour of truce was ending. A ripple of unease went through the room. Would they really return to war now? Selana rose to her feet. "This hour has been far more productive than any negotiation," she said firmly, her voice calm but resolute. "I am not prepared to return to battle. Not today, perhaps not ever, if we can help it." Heads around the room nodded. Not a single person moved to leave for their ships. They stayed. In fact, the discussion and camaraderie continued well past the originally allotted time. In that unassuming asteroid cafe, former enemies even scribbled outlines of a new accord on a napkin as ideas flowed. By the end of it, they agreed to extend the ceasefire indefinitely and to hold a formal peace summit soon. With coffee breaks, everyone insisted with a chuckle. They also decided to form a joint committee of various species, not just politicians, but military officers and civilians together, to address each side's grievances in a series of relaxed, roundtable meetings. Even the most suspicious ambassador offered a grudging apology for his earlier accusations, admitting he had been too untrusting. The humans graciously took no offense. Warlord Krazak invited Admiral Selana to visit the Draken homeworld as an honored guest. "You will have safe passage," he vowed. He even offered to share a traditional Draken drink, a fermented blood ale, not as refined as coffee, he joked, with her in friendship. Selana accepted, astonishing her own staff. The 1-hour meeting stretched on for nearly 4. Out in space, anxious crews aboard thousands of warships eventually received orders not to attack, but to stand down. Confusion turned to relief across the armadas. The galactic war was canceled by some miracle, or as some would later say, by the power of coffee. That a few months later, in a sunny garden courtyard of the Galactic Council Hall, a familiar group gathers. Admiral Selana, Warlord Krazak, even the once suspicious Korlakian ambassador now grinning at the mere sight of a coffee pot. They are attending a Friends of Coffee appreciation event organized by humanity. Lush green and purple foliage from Earth and various homeworlds surrounds them, filling the air with a mix of jasmine and alien floral scents. Commander Chow clinks his ceramic mug lightly to draw everyone's attention for a toast. The murmurs quiet as dozens of beings turn toward the human who, not so long ago, had the crazy idea that saved them all. "To the power of understanding and good drinks," Chow says warmly, raising his cup high. Around him, everyone raises their cups, some porcelain, some metal, some high-tech infusion chambers, and drinks together in celebration. Our view pulls back from this heartwarming scene, up above the courtyard, past the shining spires of the council city, and into the starry expanse. The once tense void between those great fleets is now just a peaceful night sky, and as we drift among the stars, we remember, sometimes the smallest gesture, an open hand offering a cup, can halt even the mightiest clash. In this vast universe, even bitter beans and hot water, served with goodwill, can brew peace.